Hello students. So here in this video, we'll be discussing CM2 paper B solutions of April 2021 attempt. Again, these are just indicative solutions. Hence, your process of your solving and my solving may be different in Excel, but yes, if it's correct, you will get full marks by IFoA. The difficulty level of CM2 paper B was moderate, I would say. It was two questions were a little bit where you needed to think and two questions were direct. So let's come to the first question. This is again a question from stochastic model of interest rates. Chapter 5. So they say annual yields I from a fund are independently and identically distributed. Each year the distribution of 1 plus I is log normal with parameters mu and sigma square. An amount of 5,000 is invested in the fund at the start of each of the next 20 years at times t equals to 0 to 19. You calculate using the probability distribution above the expected accumulated value of the fund at time t equals to 20. So there are again three methods of doing this. Okay, two methods which I know of is one is you can just simulate the values from a log normal distribution, and each year since 5,000 is being distributed from 0 to 19, 5,000 is being deposited, and the accumulated value you can find out is C7, and next year it will be whatever the value is, which is the original value D7 into the accumulation rate 1 plus I plus the amount C8. Okay, and this goes on, and the last year at the end of 20 years, you have a value of 167,876. One way is this. The other way is instead of using this as 1 plus I, you could use e to the power mu plus half sigma square as your 1 plus I as the mean of the log normal distribution, and you can find your accumulated value. Okay, these are the two ways. Both ways are acceptable in my criteria, in my eyes. What I think is both ways is acceptable. Next is a student has performed a simulation of the annual returns from distribution, and the results are provided in question 1 data worksheet. Calculate the expected accumulated value at time t equal to 20 using the simulated returns. So the returns have been given here. That is, the I has been given here if you see, and it's for 100 simulation data for 20 years. So what I've done is I've produced a similar structure here, but this value starts from obviously 0 and ends at 20. So from 0, if you see it's first B5, I've created a table here from 0 to 20, where for 0, the amount invested is 5,000, 19 is 5,000, and 20 it is 0, like the previous one. And so initially it is 5,000 for here. For the first year, it will nothing but 5,000 into 1 plus I, the one which is given in the data set, plus the 5,000 which is getting invested at the end, at the start of the first year. Okay, similarly, you can now just drag down this formula to year 20 and you will get this. So at the year 20, if you come up, it's nothing but 1629 into 1 plus I, and obviously the investment is 0. So these are the values, and obviously the expected average value, if you see, which I have told, expected accumulated value, which is taken an average of the entire rate. Okay, so this is how you calculate the third. Coming to the third part, comment on the results in part 1 and 2. So if you see, the results are almost similar. So whether you use any distribution, it's similar, but there is obviously, there'll be some difference. The difference is, if you see, for this, the variance has been taken as 6%. Sigma is 6% here, whereas there it was sigma square was only 4%. So obviously there is a difference. There'll be difference in both the values. Okay, they do not vary very significantly, but they vary because there's a different variance used for both. And then fourth part, it says using simulated returns, calculate the cumulative probability the fund value at time t equal to reaches or exceeds each of the values 100,000 to 30,000 as set out on the worksheet with an increments of 5,000. So we have taken a cumulative probability where I've taken less than equal to this value, count if 1 to 2 less than equal to. So this is 1, that is the fund value, count if this fund value which I've calculated in part 2. Okay, it reaches or less than equal to divided by the total count of the values. Okay, each of these fund values of the cumulative probability is obviously increasing one. The chart verifies that the cumulative probability is shown as it starts from 0 and ends at 100. There's a coverage of all fund value. The graph shows peak at some point that the amount of fund is value is high, such as 180,000. If you see there are fluctuations, there are some peaks at this point. Okay, and then we have also values. The graph is an increasing curve. Obviously, it's a cumulative and it reaches 100%. Okay, so this is the way you can do, or you can do the greater than way also, if you want to show the cumulative probability. Okay, moving on to question 2. A company decides to give each of its employees a new benefit. Each employee will receive 1,000 non-dividend paying shares in the company in 1 year's time, provided the share price is increased from its current level of 1 to at least 1.50. You may assume the following parameters: risk-free interest rate 4% per year, continuously compounded, stock price relatively 30% per year. Explain by considering the components of the Black-Scholes models how this model can be used to calculate the benefit of each employee. So here what we've done is we've used a portfolio, like we have considered that the employee benefit is first I've defined what is the Black-Scholes options thing says. Then I've said that the employee benefit can be treated as a European call option with a strike price of 1.5, and the share we know is non-dividend paying, which is said here 0 also. We have said the risk-free force of interest is 4%, and since European call option, the benefits Black-Scholes option pricing formula is for 1,000 shares. Okay, we do not need to pay any amount K. So over here, there's no strike price. So we'll only consider S0 into 5D1 to price this option. Okay, there's no other thing. There's only S0 into 5D1. We're not paying out anything else. So S0 into 5D1, if I calculate, is based on number of S0 is 1, 5D1 is 0.1427. For 1,000 shares, it is 142.71. Now for company now wishes to limit the gain to each employee to a maximum of 2,000. Set out how your answer part if this limit is introduced. So now what we have done is we are introducing a maximum of 2,000. It's just taking a replicating portfolio where I've set the strike price to 2. Okay, considering this is in thousands, we set the strike price to 2, and we have calculated the same thing but with a difference. Okay, so I7 into this. So this I7, which is share price of 1 into 1,000 shares into now 5 of D1 at a strike price of 2 is this. So now the person will value only 21.32 the benefit. Okay, value of the revised benefit is this, as the strike price is 2. Our answer to part 1 is if the limit is introduced, the answer to part 1 will differ. It will obviously reduce. So you can do part B and then come right in part A and so on. An employee believes the original benefit without the upper limit is worth $300. They have determined this by assuming that the 30% chance of the share price being at least 1.5 in a year's time, and then applying to the current share price. Comment on the employee's approach. So the employee is saying that the upper limit believes that the original benefit without the upper limit is 300. Okay, they have determined this by assuming that the 30% chance of the share price being at least 1.50 in year, and applying this to the current share price. So this approach is obviously not right, because 30% might not be a real world probability, whereas the discounting being used to get the value will be that of risk-free rate. So there would be some inconsistency, because in one place you are using risk-free rate of interest or discounting instead of using risk-neutral probability. So you want to stick to real world probability, we should use a real world rate of interest or discounting. In such case, probability would assume the benefits to be less valuable, because if you are using the risk-free rate, and would we also use the risk-neutral probability. Okay, so it's we have to be consistent with using the real world and the risk-free rate. Okay, also now they've said that now assume that the market exists in which a benefit can be traded by non-market marketers as an investment contract. Discuss the implications. So the implications can be, it will lead to arbitrage opportunities for others, as if for a particular employee thinks that the benefits will be more than it should be. And arbitrage opportunity, this will lead to arbitrage, while other might be able to exploit the risk-free profit also. Okay. So this changes can occur. Coming to question 3, an insurance company holds a credit risky asset with 2 years to maturity. Credit ratings A, B, C, D, number of assets held, and highest, second highest, third highest rating, and so on, and exactly 1 rating down, 2 rating, and 3 rating. There can be at most one transaction in a different rating in a single year. There are no upgrades and no other ways that an asset can leave or enter the insurance credit portal. Calculate for each of the transition matrix that shows the expected number of assets which, moving between the credit states. So for moving between the credit states, if you see, there's nothing but 1,000 into the transition probabilities, which we can find out over here. So this is, I have used the part 2 where the transition probabilities are first listed out. So first listed out the transition probabilities 0.66, 0.2, 0.1, and 0.04, and so on. And there is 1,000 at each state. So we can calculate this as well. And for next year, it is 750, 150, and so on. Construct for each year the 1-year transition matrix using our answer from part 2. So we have constructed transition matrix A 1 year and 1 year 2. For each credit rating at time 2, the probability that of default would have occurred at time 2. This P square is also calculated over here. If required, we have calculated. If not, you can take these as the required ones if you see, which we have got over here. So 10%, 26%, 50%, and 0%. Okay. And then zero risk-free bond has the following rates: 1,002, and a credit risky bond has a redemption of 2, maturity to credit rating, and recovery rate on default of 75%. The risk-free force of interest is 5%. Calculate the implied credit spread, that is return above the risk-free rate for the credit risky bond. So for this bond, if you see, percentage. Okay, so probability of default over here is given to, we have got over here that it is 10% from state A as given in the question. The recovery default is 0.75. Price we have calculated using the formula that 1,000 is the redemption amount into maturity is 2 years with a yield of minus 0.05. So we have used this into 1 minus B6, which is the probability of default, the remaining states, okay, being in the remaining states of not defaulting, plus is the probability of default with the recovery rate. If it defaults and the recovery rate is multiplied. This gives me a price of 882. So the yield will be, depending on this, ln of 1,000 divided by price divided by 2 if you solve this formula. Okay. And then it gives me the credit spreads is yield minus the above 5%, which is as said in the question, the return above the risk-free rate. So it is 1.24%. For question number part 5, explains or carry on how credit spread can change. The probability of default is increased. If the probability of default increases, then the credit spread will increase, as higher default will lead to higher chances of default being made, and therefore this would result in a higher number of expected return by the investor. Okay. Question 4 was very easy, very direct. Run of triangles that calculate the reserve at the again calculate the reserve using basic chain ladder method. So first the data was given over here. I've copied the data over here, calculated the development factors for each of the states, and then cumulative developed is nothing but the values into development factors. And since the claims are incurred, if you see the insurance companies, the claims are incurred, so we have taken a sum of all the last column, only the last column over here, which is the sum of the incurred claims. For question 4 part B, it's a Born-Houter-Ferguson method with no loss ratio. So we have calculated the loss ratio on our own, just claims divided by the premium. So this is a loss ratio. We take an ultimate as 190, and then we have initial ultimate liability, which is nothing but premium into the loss ratio for each case, different premium in the loss ratio. Then the paid out so far. Whatever is paid out so far is depending on the initial liability into the development factors. So it will change accordingly. 198. This is developing factors 1 by F divided by, if you can see, we have also used, we have calculated cumulative development factors, and then we have divided it over here. So directly we multiply over here. And then we have the emerging liability, which is initial liability minus the paid out so far. So this is the emerging, and the ultimate liability is equals to this emerging liability plus this, whatever remains. So and total sum of this will give you the reserves from the Bornhauter-Ferguson method. Okay. And the last one was comment on the differences in the reserves produced by methods in part one. So normal basic chain ladder method makes no assumption of premiums that company charge for the expected loss ratio, whereas the Bornhauter and then incorporates this particular information and use it to compute reserves. Also, if the year is not fully developed or has experienced heavy or light experience, then Bornhauter-Ferguson method is used. In practice, Bornhauter-Ferguson method may be useful for only the first only for first some years, but after the claims are fully developed, basic chain ladder method is more reliable. Okay, for longer durations once the claims are developed. So this was that CM2 paper is a very short paper, though question 2 and 3 required a lot of thinking, but still was a direct paper. Again, these are just indicative solutions. I hope y'all can see the questions, and on the marks. So it's very difficult to say what type of marks IFoA gives. It's not very clear because if you see the past papers, they have not marked very clearly. Sometimes one column has 1 mark, so 2 marks. I'm not commenting on the marks each, but yes, if you have not, even if you don't get the correct answer, but your formula and approach is correct, you will get some part marks over here. Okay, thank you.